Hey guys, what's going on? Top Tier Gaming here, and today I just wanted to have sort of a fun discussion video on some of, for me at least, the scariest level 3s in Weiss Schwarz. And this could be because they're very oppressive, or just very scary at ending the game. Just for any multitude of reasons, these could be cards that just, every time they hit the board, you know, they're just very annoying cards to deal with, or sometimes scary on whether or not you're going to survive that turn. And of course, this is in my opinion. Of course, there are many other cards that could be stronger than the cards I've picked, in your opinion, or anything like that. So yeah, be sure to leave in the comments what level 3s scare you the most when you see them, or cards that you think are blatantly overpowered, maybe. Anything like that could be cards that scare you, or you find scary. But yeah, I'm just getting it into my list. It is, again, an opinionated list, and I definitely do not remember all of the super powerful level 3s in Weiss Schwarz. But these are the ones that come to mind for me, and I'll give my reasons why, so let's get into this list. So starting with number 4, I'm going to have 4 cards and an honorable mention at the end. But starting with number 4 is actually the Monika from Nisekoi. And this one is really just like PTSD, to be honest. So this card, nowadays, I don't think is as powerful as it was back then, but I think this card is still bonkers. So newer players might not know, but older players definitely will. Back in 2014, I want to say, is the year where Monika came out. This card was ridiculous. It literally meant the game was over when it was played. If there were 2 dropped and 2 could be used, the game was over. There was almost no way to survive, even with amazing compression. Like, you could do it, but the chance, because the rest of Nisekoi was also pretty powerful for its time, so the chance that you were really far ahead was lower, and Monika was there to end the game. She's still a one-of on the ban list, even like 5 years later. That's how powerful this card is. And it's still a card where I think if it came back to 4, despite how old Nisekoi is, you would see a lot of lists for Nisekoi popping up out of nowhere. Maybe not winning regionals like it used to, but definitely topping them. Like, and this is for, of course, this is Japanese Monika, in case anyone's wondering, because the English one is heavily nerfed. But Japanese Monika is insanely powerful. It just got like 4 instances of damage on its own, which meant 8 if you had 2 of them, plus whatever else you had. This card, for its time, was just the scariest thing to see hit the board, because unless you're playing Nisekoi yourself, you probably didn't win first, and you're probably going to lose right there. In fact, I think Nisekoi was one of the decks that just had like the highest regional win rate of any other deck for its time, and maybe still to this day. Like, I felt like Nisekoi was the only thing that could do well, maybe Kantai Collection as well, but this Monika was such a scary card back in the day. So going into number 3 is actually this Futaba from Bunny Girl Senpai, and the reason this card is on the list, because it's not like a blatantly broken card, I would say. In fact, I would say it's just leaning on, like, it's really good, but it's just very oppressive in a sense as well, because it is a standby deck that the Bunny Girl Senpai is playing usually with this card in it, and they're able to bring out really huge supports, and then this thing can be like 16-5 before backups. In the middle row, you have to attack it because of Bodyguard, and they can deal you like a lot of damage even on your turn. So they get their own turn to deal damage, and then they're pinging you for damage on your turn as well. And that's just like kind of oppressive if your deck doesn't have an out to it. Getting over 16-5 before backup is no easy feat. They usually have the resources to use it, and you just have to deal with this huge Bodyguard. And it's very oppressive because if you don't have an out, it's just sitting there and dealing you damage on both players' turns. And it's really strong. Like, Bodyguards back in the day were also, they were just scarce in general. There weren't many Bodyguards back in the day. But they also were usually just big, if anything, and they weren't that great of cards. Bodyguards nowadays are getting these effects where they are starting to deal you damage by reversing, which is a very powerful effect on them. And I think this card, for me, because a lot of my decks don't have an out to it, it just makes it really scary to deal with. Because it can do so much just on its own, let alone making sure you don't reverse any of your opponent's characters. It's a real nuisance sometimes. It's a very powerful card, and that's why it made number 3 on this list. So number 2 on this list for me is actually Priestess from Goblin Slayer. So I know over in Japan they prefer to play like a standby list, but here in the US, when you're playing the Japanese meta, the Priestess version is by far the most popular version, and she is such an oppressive card. If your opponent sets it up to where they resolve 3 of them in a turn, you're almost guaranteed to not deal damage the next turn. I've seen people start talking about how they're running +2 soul to out anti-damage. I've seen people, starting to run more selective bounce to deal with cards like these. Of course, the anti-change backup exists, which is great, but like, this card is so powerful in the sense where your opponent could have terrible compression, absolutely awful, but they resolve 3 Priestess, and then it doesn't matter how good their compression is because they're not taking damage that turn. And she's on a pants trigger, which means she can kind of loop in a sense where if you trigger a pants and there's another pants in the waiting room, you can just grab it, and you can continuously do this. And she's also pretty big on defense, and Goblin Slayer runs all these assists to make her even bigger. And she can become a very, very annoying card. If you don't have outs to anti-damage, she can really push the momentum in Goblin Slayer's favor just so fast. Goblin Slayer doesn't even run many healers. They run like 1 or 2 because they don't need to heal because they're not taking damage. And they don't run many very powerful game enders, at least in the Priestess version, because they don't need to. They're winning the sustain game. So Priestess is a very scary card to deal with. I know I manually put outs to Priestess in my deck, and it's anti-damage in general, but I feel like Priestess is just the strongest because she does just have this blanket minus soul effect, while others usually say like in front or select 2 of your opponent's characters. Priestess is just like the queen of anti-damage, and that's why she made number 2 on this list. So getting straight into number 1, and this might be an odd choice maybe people don't think of, but if you let this card catch you off guard, the game is probably over. So it's actually Evil Eye from Overlord, and this again might seem like a really odd pick. Why am I afraid of this card? Alright, so in Weiss, it's very, very common for players to leave 4 cards in their deck before attack phase, because they're playing a climax, right? And you want the climax to go back in. So you play the climax, swing 3 times, you're left with 1 card in your deck. This Evil Eye can take advantage of that so quickly and guarantee end the game. And it's one of the scariest things where, like, if you've never played against Overlord before, you can get caught by this because it's just so common to leave 1 card in your deck. But if you're playing against Overlord, you have to refresh your deck the turn before they're about to drop Evil Eye. So if you don't know what this card does, when you play the pants, which is what she combos with, she can shuffle 3 cards back from your opponent's waiting room into their deck. So if you left 1 card in your deck and it's not a climax, you have 10 damage suddenly in your deck. And you could be at 2-5 and you're dead. You're done right there that turn. Like, she can kill you so consistently with this combo. Like, if you're caught off guard, this card will end the game for you. Like, it's such an easy win. Most people who have dealt with Evil Eye before, they play around this in a sense, but there are situations where you can't play around Evil Eye, and she's going to come down and she's going to win the game. And she has another effect too, which is another reason this card's so scary. She's a healer. She can burn you based on how many climaxes in your waiting room, which can give her 6 instances of damage, or she can just decompress you instantly, if not kill you that turn by just adding 9 damage to your deck. So she's just so scary to me, and like, I don't think she's the most broken level 3 on this list. In fact, I would think the other level 3s might even be considered better than Evil Eye. But what Evil Eye can do is just steal wins, and that is super, super scary, because if you just happen to forget or you don't set up right, you lose that turn, and it's crazy. And that's why she made number 1 on my list. So that's it for the main list, but I do want to give an honorable mention because I don't think this card is scary enough to actually make it on the list. But every time I'm thinking of just a super powerful level 3, this is the one that pops up to mind, and it's super old, not in a meta deck, but it's actually Shiroe from Log Horizon. This card, ever since the day it was released, I have loved this card because I think it is so, so powerful, despite being in a deck that's kind of underpowered, we'll say. He is one of the only, if not the only, anti-burn in the game that is at least relevant. He just stops all burn damage, period. Your opponent cannot deal burn by auto effects. They cannot deal damage by auto effects. Let me correct myself. And then he's also like a 3,000, or he's a level assist, but 1,000 times the level. And then he also has an anti-damage effect. Like, honestly, there have been times where I want to build Log Horizon just because Shiroe exists. And I think this card, maybe everyone thinks it's kind of powerful, but I feel like it's really undervalued for a deck that is so underpowered. Like, Shiroe to me is just one of the most powerful cards that has been printed. And I guess it's an odd pick or a hot take. But yeah, I just truly feel that this Shiroe is just so, so good for what it is. I think the only downside of this card is that it doesn't heal on play. But every time I think of this card, think about playing against it, especially in decks that are like on reverse burn combos, this card is a nightmare, and that's why he's an honorable mention. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you did enjoy. It was supposed to be more of like just a fun, lighthearted video because, you know, there's so many cards that could be on this list, and I hope you leave yours in the comment because I know there's a card for everyone that people either hate seeing it on their opponent's field, hate to deal with it, or what have you. And yeah, I'd like to know what yours are, so leave them down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. This is Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.